Hey guys, what's up? So we are now in the second part of the Sengoku Jidai series by Kings and Generals, and I'm really looking forward to it. If you want to watch the original video by him, the link is down in the description down below. And if you enjoy my channel, my commentary, and you want to help me out in any way, shape, or form, feel free to please like, comment, subscribe, and maybe consider being like a YouTube or Patreon member if you're able to. And now with that said, and now without any further ado, let's just get right into it, guys. Let's watch the second part of this series. Oh, snap.
Born in the early months of 1536, Hideyoshi was the son of a farmer named Yemon, who lived in a small village in the province of Owari near modern-day Nagoya. His father, in the spirit of the age, was also a part-time soldier, serving in the armies of the local warlord Oda Nobuhide. While Yemon's life as a foot soldier did put him in a better financial state compared to other peasants, he was, socially speaking, still far away from the ruling samurai class, and theoretically his descendants couldn't hope to achieve much greater heights in life. In an age of constant warfare and bloodshed, being in the military was also extremely dangerous, and at the age of 7, Hideyoshi was orphaned. Not much else is known about his childhood, but we know that when young Hideyoshi turned 15, he sought to follow in his father's footsteps and become a soldier under the command of one of the retainers of Imagawa Yoshimoto. This was an odd maneuver, as the Imagawa clan was a rival of the Oda, the family his father had served diligently for years. But Hideyoshi had ambitions above his station, and Yoshimoto was one of the biggest names in Japan during.
He assumed the name Hideyoshi later. At that time, he introduced himself as Kinoshita Tokichiro. Alright, very interesting. At least with the ambitions to achieve something greater, because again, things seem pretty, like he just said, deadlocked in terms of like lower peasantry, like I guess be a soldier, and that's probably the highest, so I'm smelling an underdog rising through the social ranks coming. I'm hoping I'm right. But yeah, someone who's somehow gonna pull himself into higher places.
During that time, so powerful in fact that he was considered one of the few men capable of overthrowing the shogunate and assuming the title for himself. Hideyoshi's servitude under the Imagawa banner wouldn't last for long, and after 7 years, he sought employment from a young, ambitious, and ruthless warlord, Oda Nobunaga. This change of heart, as it turned out, couldn't have come at a more convenient time. Just 2 years later, in 1560, Imagawa Yoshimoto decided to march on the capital city of Kyoto and assume true power for himself by bending the Ashikaga shogun to his will. The road to Kyoto passed through the Oda domain, and the two sides would clash in a series of battles, with the largest and most pivotal being that at Okehizama. Ieyasu was born in Okazaki Castle of Mikawa Province on the 31st of January 1343, receiving the child's name of Takechiyo. His father was Matsudaira Hirotada, the lord of Okazaki and daimyo of the province, and his mother was Odai no Kata, the daughter of Mizuno Tadamasa, who was lord of Carrier Castle. Takechiyo was born in a difficult time for the Matsudaira clan. Mere months after his son's birth, Hirotada's uncle, Matsudaira Nobutaka, defected to the side of the Oda clan of Owari. At the same time, Tadamasa also passed away, leaving the leadership of the clan to his son Nobumoto, who also sided with Oda Nobuhide. Nobumoto was emboldened by the weakening of the Matsudaira clan and resumed his offensives in Mikawa. Hirotada, unable to directly confront the Matsudaira on the battlefield, sent Kagehi Shigetada to surrender Okazaki to Matsudaira Tadamoto. However, Shigetada's true mission was to assassinate the man, a dubious task which he successfully completed.
Wow.
An enraged Nobuhide gathered his troops to march to Okazaki and conquer Mikawa. Hirotada, lacking military strength, turned to Lord Imagawa Yoshimoto of Suruga province for assistance and offered Takechiyo as a hostage to the Imagawa. Young Takechiyo set off with a small escort of 50 armed men and 27 other companions and servants. Yet when nearing Tawara, they were ambushed by Toda Yasumitsu, who had turned to Nobuhide's side. Yasumitsu and his brother kidnapped Takechiyo and brought him in front of their master in Kawatari Castle. Using Takechiyo's life as leverage, the Oda daimyo demanded that Hirotada surrender to Okazaki immediately. Hirotada was a warrior through and through, and determined that Takechiyo's death would serve only to solidify his alliance with the Imagawa.
Dang. That poor kid. I kind of feel bad for the kids who kind of get involved in this. Like last episode mentioning several like literal 7 or 8-year-olds, you know? Like, I'm just thinking when I was a kid, like I wouldn't have grasped any of this. I mean, granted though, some of them were higher up, so I guess they must have been probably better educated more than me, but like you know what I mean, right? Like there's only so much I feel like a child can actually grasp, and I just feel bad, you know, kind of seeing them used as just like these political chess pieces. But well, that's just politics, I guess, especially as ruthless as this. But dang, man. He really said he's a worthy sacrifice. Dang.
Thus, he refused. Upon seeing that Hirotada wouldn't bend, Nobuhide decided to keep Takechiyo hostage at Manshoji Temple in Nagoya. The boy stayed there for 3 years, but his captivity wasn't that bad. Because of his young age, everyone treated him with kindness, and he enjoyed far better conditions than any normal prisoner of war would expect. While
That's
Takechiyo
good.
was held hostage in Manshoji, the war between the two clans continued. With the assistance of the Imagawa forces, Hirotada was able to push back Nobuhide, but he wouldn't live long enough to enjoy his victory, as he died in 1549, likely of disease, although some suspected foul play. His rival Nobuhide also followed him to the grave at roughly the same time, leaving temporarily his eldest but illegitimate son, Nobuhiro, in charge of the clan. The Imagawa army, led by Yoshimoto's uncle, Sesai, besieged Nobuhiro's forces at Anjo. With Sesai's forces threatening to conquer the province completely, Nobunaga agreed to end the conflict and save his trapped half-brother by releasing Takechiyo. The 9-year-old boy was then transferred to Sumpu after a brief stay in Okazaki, where he paid his respects to his father's grave. Takechiyo's time in the Imagawa capital was similar to what one would expect of a lord of his age, minus the freedom to travel as he pleased. Wanting to foster a loyal and dependable ally, Yoshimoto provided everything young Takechiyo could possibly need. Naturally, the boy was not alone in Suruga, as 2 guardians and 7 pages, roughly his own age, accompanied him. These men would later stand by an adult Tokugawa Ieyasu's side, and included individuals such as Sakakibara Sadamasa, Abe Mototsugu, and the man who would become his closest friend in life, Tori Mototada. In Suruga, there was also another noble boy with whom Takechiyo developed a close relationship. Takechiyo spent much of these blissful childhood years ignoring Sesai's tutelage in favor of his favorite pastime activity, hawking, but these idyllic days would soon come to an end. When Takechiyo reached the age of 15, a coming-of-age ceremony was held at Sumpu, with Yoshimoto himself becoming the Eboshoya, something similar to his godfather. The Imagawa daimyo also gave Takechiyo a new name. He would, from then on, be known as Matsudaira Jirosaburo Motonobu. He did not keep that name for long, and the following year, he married Yoshimoto's niece and changed it to Motoyasu after his grandfather Kiyoyasu, whom he admired. The following spring, Motoyasu finally went on his first campaign, seeking to recover the lands of West Mikawa, which had come under Nobunaga's control after the betrayal of Suzuki Shigeteru. After gathering his men in Ozaki, Motoyasu moved towards Terabe and was able to capture some of the outlying fortifications. However, the main castle proved a tough nut to crack, so the Matsudaira daimyo was content with setting the fortress on fire and retiring safely. A counterattack launched by Oda forces was easily repelled. Motoyasu returned triumphantly to Sumpu and Yoshimoto, who granted him gifts, but did not allow him to relocate to Okazaki permanently. This didn't affect Motoyasu, who continued adding military successes to his resume. The next year, he was tasked with resupplying the castle of Otaka, which had come under siege from forces loyal to the Oda. The castle had been built as an outlying fortress by Nobunaga, and had recently come under Imagawa control after its castellan had defected to Yoshimoto's side. Naturally, Nobunaga was determined to reclaim Otaka, and his forces held a tight grip on the castle. Not only that, but 4 other Oda-controlled castles, Ueshizu, Manue, Umezu, and Terabe, were in close proximity and blocked the approach. As they were approaching the area, Motoyasu ordered around 1,000 of his men to attack the forts of Terabe and Umezu during the night to create a diversion. Motoyasu himself led the second contingent, which numbered roughly 800 strong, stayed with the provisions train and hid around a mile from attacker. The diversionary assault worked miracles, as the attackers were able to penetrate the defenses of the two castles and drew the garrisons of the other two, who, having caused a great commotion, came to the assistance of their comrades. With the Oda forces occupied elsewhere, Motoyasu led the provisions train safely into Otaka. Having established himself in the eyes of Yoshimoto as a competent commander, Motoyasu was
very competent. I love that. Holy crap. Okay. Alright, he's definitely, at first I was like, okay, he's a kid. But like I'm starting to see, bro, he's like developing into quite the leader, bro. So I'm actually really, that's really cool. That was impressive.
Ordered to continue his military operations for the rest of the year, and of course was included in Yoshimoto's greatest operation in July of the following year. Yoshimoto and the Imagawa clan were descended from the Minamoto clan and had close blood.
Okay, Minamoto was a noble surname bestowed by the Emperor of Japan upon members of the imperial family who were excluded from the line of succession and demoted into the ranks of the nobility since age 14. There were 21 branches of the clan, each named after the emperor from whom it descended. Interesting.
Ties with the ruling Ashikaga shoguns. Having witnessed the decline of the Ashikaga for many years, Yoshimoto had prepared to march into Kyoto and perhaps claim the title of shogun for himself. After all, his lineage would permit him to do so. In 1560, Yoshimoto was one of the few daimyos in Japan who commanded a strong enough force that was close enough to the capital to have a shot at seizing the ultimate prize. In the summer, he made his move, following the Tokaido Road through Mikawa at the head of a large force, which some sources estimate to have been around 40,000 men, while others put that number to around 25,000. Naturally, Motoyasu and his hardened Mikawa samurai were part of this force when Yoshimoto moved into Owari and began reducing the Oda border castles. Motoyasu's regiment managed to capture and then destroy Marune, and for this deed, the Imagawa daimyo gave him command of Otaka and allowed him to recuperate there. Meanwhile, Yoshimoto's own men had captured Ueshizu and had set up camp near Dengaku Hizama, where they were celebrating their success. But while Yoshimoto, full of himself, was celebrating an early victory, the Oda troops, vastly more familiar with the land, moved around Nakajima Castle, and by a route that passed through the rice fields, managed to pass undetected to the Imagawa forces' rear. According to the legend that surrounds the battle, the Oda troops assaulted the Imagawa camp, charging down from a hill while a thunderstorm was raging on, masking their movements. Yoshimoto's men, caught completely by surprise, offered little resistance.
Dang, yeah, I could see this. This is definitely, this was just a good ambush, and again, like, we've kind of seen it at times in history where just knowledge of the terrain and the element of surprise can do a lot of wonders against superior armies, plus just the weather, like, attacking while, this is all happening, helping mask its movements. It seems like the perfect storm, no pun intended, to strike. And an ambush to quickly reduce a superior force. So overall, yeah, like, good move if this is like what happened.
If Hideyoshi fought in the battle, then he must have been amidst the bloodshed that ensued, as Oda Ashigaru and samurai slaughtered their enemies, including the Imagawa daimyo.
Dang.
At that point, the morale of the invading Imagawa forces completely collapsed, and they were routed from the battlefield, heading back to their home province of Suruga.
Yeah, things were going way too well for him. Like, he was actually achieving a lot of success. Everything seemed primed for him to take the title of Shogun. He had a large, impressive force. But again, like, I've noticed in history, when things go too well, bro, something bad is bound to happen. It's almost like, just like, I don't know, fate conspires to humble you in a way. Wow. Again, like, he seemed like the one with all the advantages, right? And then got defeated by what seemed like the underdog there. Wow. Oh no.
met in high
Before long, news of Yoshimoto's death reached Motoyasu.
Mm-hmm.
After confirming the validity of this death and realizing that Nobunaga could now strike in his direction, Motoyasu cautiously retreated to Mikawa. Without the Imagawa daimyo to obstruct him, he moved into Okazaki after the Imagawa troops abandoned it. From there, he launched a small incursion into Owari to put the Oda forces in check, but took no further action. Nobunaga made no move towards Mikawa at that time, but in the following year, he extended his hand to Motoyasu to form an alliance. Motoyasu was caught between a rock and a hard place. Yoshimoto's heir, Ujizane, was an aesthete, having inherited his father's obsession with the arts. Yoshimoto was not a great warrior, and Ujizane was even less so. It was therefore evident to Motoyasu that Ujizane was not the man to rely on during such dangerous times. On the other hand,
I see. Okay. Yeah, like I said, like, I'm really interested in Motoyasu, kind of, like, journey of where the heck he's gonna end up, as he's, like, proving to be competent, but yeah, he's kind of, like, in between all these guys and just trying to, like, yeah, you gotta make the best alliance to ensure to save your own hide, right?
Imagawa still held many hostages of the Matsudaira clan and had been a long-standing ally. After much deliberation, Motoyasu decided to throw in his lot with the Oda and traveled to Kiyosu to solidify his new alliance. Naturally, this move alarmed Ujizane, who questioned Motoyasu's intention. Still, he was able to convince him that his journey to Owari only served to placate the Oda daimyo and buy some time of respite for both the Matsudaira and the Imagawa clans. As Ujizane still held Motoyasu's wife and firstborn son as hostages, the Matsudaira daimyo could not yet openly side with the Oda or go against the Imagawa. But in 1562, he came up with a plan to overcome this obstacle. He sent 80 men to infiltrate Kaminogo Castle in the southern part of Mikawa, which also marked the westernmost point of Imagawa's border. Posing as Imagawa soldiers, they entered the castle. Once inside, the group of shinobi managed to cause great commotion by setting fire to buildings and killing Udono Nagateru, who was Kaminogo's commander and Ujizane's cousin, and capturing his sons. Ujizane
holy crap. Okay, like I'm telling you, the guy's cunning. He's definitely showing his cunning, and that he's using to just not to get any advantage. But that was genius. Hostage negotiation, essentially, or rather a trade-off. Wow. Well played, sir. Well played.
Motoyasu's wife and children for them. But in reprisal, he executed some of the hostages that hadn't been included in the deal. Among these was Motoyasu's father-in-law, who was forced to commit seppuku. Motoyasu would go on to solidify his alliance with Nobunaga by marrying his firstborn son, who assumed the name Nobuyasu, to Nobunaga's daughter, Toku. The new name, as you might have already guessed, served to flatter the Oda warlord, who was the senior partner in this alliance. Speaking of name changes, Motoyasu would change his name once again, shedding the prefix Moto, which he had taken in honor of his master Yoshimoto. From 1563 onwards, he would be known as Ieyasu, the prefix Ie in honor of the previous shoguns who had it in their name, and especially Minamoto no Yoshi-Ie, a legend.
Okay, it's noted in Japanese history as one of the most brilliant warriors. Nobles of the day referred to him as the samurai of the greatest bravery under heaven. Dang, that's a great title. Courageous in battle, he is also remembered as an accomplished poet and motivating leader.
Legendary samurai of the Heian period, whom Ieyasu regarded highly. Imagawa Ujizane was not a man suited for war, but before Ieyasu could make a move against him, he would first need to secure his rule on Mikawa. Like in many other regions in Japan during that time, religious sects had gathered significant power and threatened the established order in Ieyasu's home province. Some of these sects, known as the Ikki, had even declared their autonomy, collecting their own taxes and raising their own forces. To make matters worse for Ieyasu, they even controlled forts close to Okazaki, becoming the master of the roads and communications to and from his seat. Moreover, in late 1563, when Ieyasu demanded a part of the rice stockpiles in Jogaji Temple, an armed uprising erupted. The armed peasants and warrior monks were even joined by some of Ieyasu's retainers, who held a grudge against him for the slaughter of the hostages in Simpu, or were with the rebels out of religious sympathy. Others joined Ieyasu's enemies simply because they thought the crisis provided a good opportunity for them to obtain greater power. However, the
Dang, holy crap.
majority of Ieyasu's men remained loyal to their master and helped him put down the uprising. On the 15th of January of the following year, the two sides clashed at the battle that would largely determine the outcome of the uprising. Forces from the Honshuji and Shomanji temples marched to capture Okazaki, knowing that Ieyasu was absent. Indeed, Ieyasu had left 2 days earlier to defend Kamiwada Fortress, where a bullet came close to ending his life. The remaining troops engaged the rebels at Ohira. When news of the battle reached Ieyasu's ears, he rushed with his uncle, Mizuno Nobumoto, to attack the Ikki's rear and engage them at Akukizaka. Leading heroically from the front line, Ieyasu inspired his troops and even managed to win back some of those who had previously defected to the Iko Ikki. The victory at Akukizaka, while it did not bring an immediate end to the Ikki uprising, significantly weakened the religious sects and convinced many of the rebels to return to Ieyasu. By mid-February, the forces of the Mikawa Iko Ikki had weakened so much that they offered peace terms to Ieyasu. The rebels asked for pardons for the lives of the participants and the leaders, and for the temple grounds to be kept as they were before. Ieyasu, whose top priority at that time was to bring order to Mikawa, quickly agreed, and peace returned to the land. Ieyasu did indeed spare the lives of those who had rebelled against him, and he even forgave some of them, but not all of them went unpunished. A number of them, including Masanobu, had their lands and titles stripped away and were forced into exile. A few months later,
Yeah, that's the thing though. Like, definitely magnanimous in terms of kind of, for the most part, agreeing. Though granted, his agreement, obviously, he just wants peace. And still though, pardoning and keeping alive all of them is still kind of magnanimous, I think. But yeah, he can't be completely like, okay, no consequences at all. It would definitely come across as a bit too weak. There's kind of like a fine line between ruthlessness and mercy. I feel like you're gonna kind of walk. Like, you kind of have to, I don't know, do both in a sense. You get what I mean? So definitely, yeah, okay, forgiven, but there needs to be some type of consequence just to show you're not too much of a pushover, I feel. So that's good. He's at least making some move in regard to that, you know.
as the influence of the temples had weakened even more, Ieyasu went back on his promise and ordered the temples to be demolished.
Never mind. Oh boy. You know, it kind of reminds me, like, when I'm playing, like, Total War Rome 2, and then, like, one time, right, I was playing as the Seleucid Empire in my latest campaign, and, like, I feel like when I played as Macedon, I didn't really have many civil wars, but I think the Seleucids have more because there's more political families. There's Egyptians, Parthians, Jewish families, Greek families, so just a lot more politics to juggle, and I had a rebellion where a group in my far eastern provinces near Bactria just, you know, rebelled against me, and I had to turn back to reconquer a few of my towns. And I kid you not, this is like the ultimate, like, middle finger that the AI gave me. I at the time, my borders were neighboring with the kingdom of Bactria, and Bactria was like a vassal or a satrapy of mine at the time. And then we were trade agreement. They joined me in wars. We were tied, you know. Like, my eastern flank rear was completely protected because I had Bactria. They were the only other eastern side because I conquered most of the east. But this succession, this rebel group, as I'm, like, in the process of taking back my towns, immediately becomes a satrapy of Bactria. And I'm just flabbergasted. And then the prompt is, this faction has now become a satrapy. Do you wish to make peace or declare war on the overlord? And I'm like, I'm not letting any bit of my empire fall away from me. So I immediately just like, F you, Bactria, bro. We were cool. This is like the ultimate, like, no. And then I went to war with Bactria to that. So I don't know. Okay. It just kind of reminded me of that. And so, something like that. I'm sorry. Just, I wanted to tell that story because it's hilarious.
When the monks tried to complain, Ieyasu explained that he thought keeping the grounds as they were before meant before the temples were constructed, and therefore he was returning the land to nature.
Oh my gosh. Loophole. Oh wow, what a smart bud he is. Oh man, that's hilarious, bro. I love this.
With no armies left to oppose him, the monks simply accepted their fate.
Dang.
The battle at Okehizama shook the political landscape of central Honshu. Still, in the following year, a battle of equal fame took place in the Japanese Alps at Kawanakajima between the Takeda and the Uesugi clans. The residents of the area had become accustomed to the two clans fighting there, as they had clashed 3 times already, with the most recent battle having occurred just 4 years earlier. This time, their conflict had its origins in Uesugi Kenshin's campaign against the Hojo in the spring of 1561. Gathering a massive host, Kenshin marched into Kanto and even laid siege to Odawara, the home castle of the Hojo. Honoring his alliance with the Hojo and knowing he couldn't just let Kenshin acquire that much power, Shingen took to the field and, in May, crossed the Usui Pass and headed into northern Shimano. There, they descended to Warigadake Castle near the shore of Lake Noriji, forcing Kenshin to return to Echigo and march his forces to Kawanakajima to prevent any further incursions. Leaving behind Saito Tomonobu to defend Echu and Nagao Masakage at Kasugiyama, Uesugi Kenshin, at the head of more than 18,000 men, approached the Takeda forces' position, leaving some 5,000 at Senkoji as a rearguard. The border, if we can call it that, between the two clans had been fortified by the Takeda, who had captured and constructed castles behind Chikumegawa, with the most important one being that of Kaizu, located in a strategic position that would enable the Takeda to control the battlefield. Realizing the defensive capabilities of Kaizu, Kenshin headed to the fort of Aminnomiya, where another river crossing existed, and captured nearby Saijo Hill, threatening the Takeda left flank. There he waited.
Gosh.
In the meantime, Shingen, who was in Kofu, had received a message of Kenshin's moves and marched out at the head of an 18,000-strong force, reaching Kawanakajima on the 3rd day of October. There he set up his own camp on the west bank of Chikumegawa on a hill called Chausuyama. For 5 days, nothing happened, as both commanders had realized their armies were evenly matched. However, on the 8th, Shingen broke camp and headed into Kaizu, where he convened a council to devise a battle plan. There, his right-hand man and military advisor, Yamamoto Kansuke, proposed luring Kenshin's army into an attack and into a position where they could be flanked. The plan was as follows.
The flank is the oldest trick in the book, so not a bad idea to go with. I will admit though, I am kind of like I think definitely the biggest challenge so far in this series is definitely keeping track of everyone. I mean, we've been through, like, conflicts that are a bit complex, like the Italian Wars, for instance, which was one of the most confusing things I ever watched from Kings and Generals. But I'll admit, like, a part of me is like, I'm gonna have to rewatch this series for sure, because there is a lot of moving chess. There's a lot of big players, you know what I mean? And clans and whatnot. I was thinking, like, well, maybe in Japan I might be able to keep track of everything. Nah, you know, for sure. But I am trying. I'm definitely gonna have to rewatch this.
Gen would take 8,000 men and, using the cover of night, would move and take positions at Hachimanbara, the center plains of Kawanakajima, by way of Hirose Fort. Once that was done, Kosaka Masanobu would take the rest of the army, some 12,000 men, and again, using the cover of darkness, would attack Kenshin's position at Saijo-san from the rear. Thus, Masanobu's attack would force the Uesugi down the mountain and into Shingen's regiment. Facing an attack from both sides, Kenshin would surely be defeated. Following.
Okay, interesting plan. Now I guess it all comes down to execution.
Kansuke's plan, Shingen marched his group to Hachimanbara, where he deployed his forces in a stork's wing formation. Yamagata Masakage, Takeda Nobushige, and Naito Masatoyo took the center of the vanguard, Morozumi Masakyo on the right wing, and Anayama Nobukimi the left. Behind them followed the main body of Shingen's group, with Takeda Nobukedo and Hara Masatane on the left, and Mochizuki Masayori and Takeda Yoshinobu on the right. Even further behind was the rearguard, commanded by Atobi Katsusuke, Imafuku Zenkuro, and Asari Nobutane. From Shingen's perspective, all had gone according to the plan. However, Kenshin had not been fooled. His spies and scouts had informed him of Shingen's movements, and the Dragon of Echigo.
Oh, I see. And that kind of goes to show you, in war, so many times we've seen superior intelligence and data gathering will often give you the edge over your adversaries. So, dang.
Had marched most of his troops during the night away from Saijo-san, leaving behind only a force of 1,000 men to guard the fort of Amennomiya, and took positions in front of Shingen's force.
Oh, dang.
Kenshin unleashed his attack on the Takeda position, catching Shingen, who was expecting the Uesugi troops to be fleeing from Masanobu's attack, completely by surprise.
Ooh.
The leading charge of the Uesugi...
Ooh, everything fell apart. Oh my gosh. Not prepared. And he seems to have the numerical superiority in terms of just... Well... Yeah, seems to have more troops, so dang.
Troops met those of Takeda Nobushige, and a fierce battle ensued that claimed the life of Shingen's brother.
Ooh.
On the right flank, Takemata Hiratsuna launched his attack on Naito Masatoyo and Morozumi Masakyo. When his troops showed signs of fatigue, Kenshin replaced them with fresh troops, maintaining the pressure on the Takeda forces and creating what has been described as a winding wheel. From his headquarters at the center, Shingen was desperately trying to manage the situation that was turning for the worse as even his center was being pushed back. Then, in the midst of combat, one of the most famous duels of the Sengoku Jidai took...
Ooh, yes. I love duels. Something about a duel just is so cool in the middle of a battlefield, and then just two guys who are pretty high ranking just see each other. It's like on sight. They're like, "We're gonna kill you. We're gonna kill each other." You know, like I read the Iliad when I was in my freshman year of high school back in like 2014, and the book was chock full of many duels, and like it was something like always kind of I found funny, because like they would give these long speeches about their lineage, and I'm like, aren't you in the middle of a battlefield? Like, how are you able to deliver this multiple page soliloquy about your lineage while there's just screaming and killing all around you? Like, I always kind of found that funny, and I kind of always always noticed that. But even in real life duels, like I think the most duels we ever saw was in the early Muslim expansion, where everyone would just offer 1v1 and the Muslims always won. So I don't know. Definitely really something I always do like. I think it's just kind of cool.
Place. A mounted figure came galloping towards Shingen, who was sitting on his stool. The white head cowl and his green surcoat betrayed his identity. It was Uesugi Kenshin himself.
Ooh.
The dragon had found the tiger and was trying to end the conflict with a single stroke of his sword.
Dang.
Having no time to draw his, Shingen parried the blows with his war fan before his retainers intervened and drew.
Wow, that's really cool, actually. That image of he got jumped and then he's fending himself with a war fan. He said war fan, right? Let me look. Oh, gosh darn it, wait. Japanese war fan. Ooh, okay, wait, let's see. Hard fan to use as a weapon for signaling. Okay, type made used by samurai. Okay, that's really cool. Sorry, like it's kind of like there's this thing in like some of you might know there's this show, like children's show back in the early 2000s called Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I grew up with that show. I remember it used to be on Nickelodeon all the time. Even when it wrapped up, like reruns of Avatar were always around. And there's a group called the Kyoshi Warriors, and they used fans as weapons. So like really cool to see that. Avatar was a really great show. Like, just like, honestly, one of those lightning in a bottle things. Nowadays it's just SpongeBob reruns, but I remember back then it was Avatar reruns. Yeah, so I don't know. Really cool to see. I'm wondering how it looked in practice though, like in a practical sense, like deflecting blows and like I definitely would like to see like more depictions of like real life usage of the war fan because it seems like such a unique weapon.
Drove off Kenshin. The fierce fight continued, claiming also the lives of Morozumi Masakyo and Yamamoto Kensuke, who considered themselves responsible for the plan's failure, and charged the Usugi lines alone, perishing in a blaze of glory.
Dang.
But despite the numerous losses, the Takeda force stood firm, and Shingen had a hidden ace up his sleeve, Kosaka Masanobu's regiment, which by that time had climbed up the desolate Saijo-san and realized what had happened.
Ooh.
Wasting little time, Masanobu led his troops down the mountain towards Amennomiya, and from there they would attack Kenshin's flank. The fort at Amennomiya was guarded by Amakasu Kagemochi and his 1,000-strong regiment. Despite their fierce resistance, Masanobu's force was 12 times larger, and soon crossed the river onto the plains and fell on Kenshin's flank.
Dang! The flank, the oldest trick in the book, once again comes in handy. Despite the plan going awfully, this hidden contingent, bro. This has to be the thing that turns the tide, right?
Short of how the original plan was supposed to unfold. The battle continued for a few hours, until both sides stopped to lick their wounds. Masanobu had saved Shingen from a defeat, but the outcome of the Fourth Battle of Kawanakajima could hardly be called a victory for either side.
It's true, it was not the decisive victory Shingen wanted. But again, it's not the defeat that it could have been, considering that his original plan failed, so I guess the benefit is live to fight another day.
Though both did claim it as such. Both clans had lost many soldiers and notable generals, making the battle one of the most costly draws in their history. The following day, Kenshin destroyed whatever remained of his camp at Saijo-san and retreated towards the north. Shingen did not stop him. Following the spectacular victory at Okehizama, Nobunaga consolidated his power in Owari and began a long and bloody campaign to subjugate the neighboring Mino province ruled by the Saito clan. During this time, and through his brilliant achievements, Hideyoshi would rise to fame and become one of Nobunaga's most trusted advisors and generals. Nobunaga's preference towards Hideyoshi can be seen by his appointment as a sandal bearer, whose duty, as the name implies, was to carry his lord's sandals and keep them warm. This was considered a prestigious position, as Hideyoshi would accompany his lord everywhere. But warming footwear wasn't the only item on Hideyoshi's to-do list. He would also take on and succeed in every task that was delegated to him, such as the reconstruction of Kyushu Castle. But where Hideyoshi truly shined was military affairs. Saito's main stronghold, Inobiyama Castle, was a formidable mountain fortress, and because of the geography of the region, the most effective approach was from Tsunemata. According to legends, Hideyoshi proposed the construction of a fortification there, a task he would undertake, and with
Legend says that for this achievement, he was given the name Hashiba Hideyoshi by Nobun. I'm sorry. So evidence suggests that the first usages of that name come from 1573 and that he still used Kinoshita up to that point.
the help of a bandit named Hachisuka Masakatsu, complete overnight.
Dang, in a single night?
This apocryphal tale clearly exaggerates Hideyoshi's siegecraft ability.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like a single night, like unless it's like a really like kind of like crappy makeshift one, maybe. But like a good like one, like that's gonna take a bit more than just a night, right?
Which was nonetheless astonishing. Even with using pre-constructed parts, the fortifications at Tsunemata would take several days to be constructed, and when finished, they would be a far cry from the traditional Japanese castle that comes to mind, instead resembling more of a fort, with moats, wooden palisades and watchtowers, a sight that, despite its humble looks, caused some panic among the Saito retainers. Another tale of the time tells us of how Hideyoshi was able to enlist under his service the master tactician Takenaka Shigeharu, also known as Hanbei. The most likely fictitious account states that Hideyoshi visited the renowned strategist who lived in solitude on Mount Kurihara and successfully convinced him to join the Oda camp after meeting him 3 times, an act reminiscent of Zhuge Liang's recruitment by Liu Bei in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Finally, it was time for the final assault at Inobiyama, and Hideyoshi's contribution to the capture of Inobiyama had him leading a literal commando raid inside the castle. As a frontal assault on the impregnable Saito stronghold was deemed suicidal, alternatives, including bribery, were explored. But Hideyoshi, in his usual outgoing and likable fashion, had befriended the son of a local farmer named Horio after seeing him wrestling with a boar.
Really? Okay, that's cool. Horio would enter a long service under Hideyoshi and later, Ieyasu, and become daimyo until his death in 1604. Wow.
Horio revealed to Hideyoshi the existence of a goat path leading up the cliffside of the mountain to the north of the castle, and in turn, Hideyoshi told his lord of his plan to lead a select group of men into the fortress to open the gates for Nobunaga's main force from the inside. Nobunaga gave his permission, and during the night, guided by Horio and using only the moonlight to see, Hideyoshi's men scaled the cliff and entered Inobiyama unnoticed.
Wow.
Just before dawn, the brave commandos came out of their hiding spots and began causing havoc by lighting fires which spread panic among the castle's garrison. Hideyoshi and his men then climbed the walls and tied the gourds they used as water canteens on the tip of their spears to signal Nobunaga that the plan was a success. Oda's main force.
Dang, that's really cool. I love these little like infiltration adventures that they're going on. Just really cool and impressive too. Okay, this Hideyoshi guy, I think he's gonna. I'm kind of struggling because like sometimes with these series there's like a kind of like what I would call a main character, or at least someone who we follow. There's been many characters as of late, so I'm like, I don't know. Granted, this conflict goes on for a long time, so there's definitely gonna be a change, a lot of people introduced and killed, but I don't know. Like I'm trying to like link to somebody, like I do. Like, okay, who am I following? Like, I don't know. We'll see. There's many impressive people so far in this series, though. It's hard, you know what I mean, in that regard.
Soon swept up the mountain and promptly captured Inobiyama, which became Nobunaga's new main seat of power and was renamed Gifu. To celebrate and remember this great victory, Hideyoshi adopted the gourd as his battle standard, and popular tales often tell that for each victory gained, he would add another one, thus famously creating the 1,000 golden gourd standard.
Wow. That's awesome. So guys, I'm gonna end this part right here, but I'm really enjoying this series and all the people I'm being introduced to, and I'm looking forward to continuing more, so tomorrow we will get to that. Until then, take care.